All right, well, welcome back, everybody. This would be episode 4 of our podcast. We took a little bit of a hiatus. It's been 6 months or so since our last episode.
Yeah, it's been
Nathan, what have we
Wow.
been up to?
This summer was busy for us. I mean, we got some really fun gigs, so we were pretty busy working on a couple of cool projects that we have since finished. So now we're back to have a little bit more spare time to do things like this.
Yeah, we got to do a pretty cool documentary project abroad in Kenya for a bit.
Yeah.
Then we got to travel for fun in Canada, which was nice.
Yeah.
Shot a big commercial.
Oh yeah, we got a little vacation in there too. I
Shot a
forgot
beer
about
ad
that.
too.
Shot a beer ad. Yeah, it was honestly, man, it was such a good summer. You and I got to do a lot of stuff together, and we just had a lot of fun. I totally kind of forgot that we went on vacation together, did some hiking, went up in the mountains. It was awesome.
One of
It was
these days
great.
we'll do an episode from Diani Beach.
Perhaps
One of these
Yeah,
days.
yeah. Or kite surfing. That might have been my highlight from the last 6 months. We did some kite surfing when we were finished filming this project in Kenya, and I had so much fun. And I also enjoyed watching your ass getting drug around the
Yeah, I
ocean
now have a nice
on the
scar on
kite.
my shin to remember the good times of being drugged across the coral reef
Yeah,
at low
it was fun,
tide.
though.
But anyway,
All right. Well, what are we talking about today?
so for this episode, we are diving a little bit into a bit of a hot topic in the industry right now, which is AI in filmmaking. So we're calling this episode AI in Filmmaking, Tool or Threat. So we're going to kind of dive into some of the pros and cons of AI in the industry. It's going to become a much larger piece of the industry in the near future. So we're going to talk about some of our experiences thus far.
You know, for this episode, I was looking back on the very first time we ever integrated AI into our workflow, and it was 2023. So it really wasn't that long ago. It was almost exactly 2 years ago. It was actually fall of 2023. And we had this interview that we were filming for a project, and it just put us in this crummy conference room. There really wasn't much we could do in there. So in post, we used the Photoshop generative fill tool, AI tool, to kind of take what was just a dumpy, regular looking conference room background and spice it up a little bit. I mean, it still looked like a conference room, but we added
spruce it up a little
we
bit.
had a window in the background with a plant next to it, and just some really small elements. It worked quite nicely to make the shot a little bit better. And that was the very first time we'd ever used it, and that was just such a tiny little addition to a larger project. But to just think in 2 years the number of tools that we have available to us now and how we're integrating it into our workflows, it's pretty crazy to see how far along this has come so quickly.
One thing that we could kind of preface this whole podcast with, just as a disclaimer, we do use AI as part of the business. So this is not really going to be a podcast where we sit and hate on AI and say it's going to be the end of the world and the end of creativity as we know it. We're going to kind of talk about the pros and cons of all the platforms that we've used and get you thinking about, if you're a filmmaker or a brand manager or any sort of business, how you can kind of integrate AI into that to make your business better. Because I feel like if you don't get on board now, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And I think there was an interesting kind of piece of news sort of that hit I think it was last week, or either early last week or end of the week prior. But OpenAI, have you seen the new OpenAI commercial that came out recently? It was advertising ChatGPT.
I haven't.
Okay, so OpenAI, who also interestingly owns Sora, which is a pretty big video AI platform, they just came out with a new commercial, and it's a 30-second broadcast piece that probably, I would guess, was a pretty big, spend for them on the production side of things. And they filmed it entirely on film. Not even digital video. They didn't use any AI tools at all. They built this 30-second ad entirely on 35 millimeter film. So, it's just to go and show these big players in the game that are doing these big ad spends, that own some of the best video making tools. They're still relying on these old school tools to make their commercials. So If that sets any sort of standard as to where we are, at least currently today, with the ability of AI, I think that shows us a lot. So, speaking of OpenAI, who owns ChatGPT, that's who they were making the commercial for ChatGPT. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that you and I use every day. What's kind of in our toolkit? What are we liking? How are we using it? To give people a little bit of a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely use a fair amount of platforms in our time, and it's certainly increased. Kind of, I would say, in the last year, we kind of probably initially started using little things like Photoshop and the generative fill to kind of make little repairs here and there, but it really has, in the last year or so, expanded pretty across the board for all the different things we would use. We use it on both the visual side for like Midjourney or Runway AI or Luma Labs. Obviously, I think you use ChatGPT a lot for sure. I use it as well. And I think, well, so what are some other ones? ElevenLabs, maybe we use for voiceovers.
And then what's the one that,
have I forgotten
what's
any?
the one that we've used to create songs, soundtracks?
Oh, Suno. I think it's called Suno. Yeah.
We've used that.
Which we've used, commercially, actually. And that one, I would say, is probably, I would say I've been most pleased with the results out of the box that we've gotten with that one.
Yeah, I would say the audio side of things are really where AI is kind of shining to the point where it can actually, in some scenarios, in some use cases, replace what we were doing previously in terms of like humans actually having to create stuff. And, it really sucks for voiceover artists. Like, it really does. But unfortunately, the reality is that you can use some of these AI voiceover tools, and in my opinion, they are getting to the point where they're pretty close to being able to replicate perfectly like what a human would sound like if you were doing a human voiceover. With ElevenLabs specifically, you have so much control over delivery, pacing, how you're pronouncing words now. So as a filmmaker, you're able to essentially get the exact pacing and everything how you want it. You can tweak it to no end. And then you can sort of just mask this professional, like perfect sound quality voice over top of it, and you're off to the races. So I think those tools are really where it's shining significantly. The visual side of things is where it's maybe still lacking quite a bit, and there's some work to be done, but you have more experience working with some of the tools. So tell us a little bit about like your frustrations that I know you've had when trying to use some of these tools to like create actual videos that are actually usable for a big screen.
It's interesting because we've done some projects that have been almost 100% AI.
Yeah, we have.
I think of the one project we did for, it was it was like a game. I can't remember the type of game it is, but it was like a medieval
tabletop role-playing game. So it's similar to like Dungeons and Dragons, sort of.
Yeah. So we wanted to build this sort of AI world based off of some of the art in the book, and we wanted to kind of create the voice of this kind of menacing villain who was the voiceover for it. I found that using the software, so like for that project, we used specifically Midjourney, Luma, and Runway AI. I found that it worked in a much more satisfactory way when it was going into a 100% AI made commercial.
Yeah.
And so people knew it was going to be AI. We're not trying to fool anybody. And I felt like we were able to build the world. All the motion and everything was looking pretty cinematic and pretty realistic. But again, everyone knows it's AI. Where I felt like it's really tough is when you're trying to blend AI with live action shots. And we tried to do that recently with a project where we tried to do some effects practically. It was like a confetti cannon was supposed to go off. And we had the confetti cannons, but we were filming outside at the time and the wind was kind of picking up.
It didn't work.
So it was just making the confetti seem too thin, right? Like it would blow through the frame and disappear. You wanted it to kind of
And we also didn't have a ton of
Right.
time either. You know, we did a number of shots and we're like, wow, we
Yeah.
have to call this and
So in our
move
minds,
on.
we're like, oh, well, maybe we can use AI to kind of augment this frame a bit and add in some extra
Mhm.
confetti. But really, I mean, it was such difficulty to get it to feel photorealistic for number one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also you're having to load your entire shot into this AI platform, which then processes and degrades the quality of the overall clip, which you don't want to do. Um, and then even if you were to try to generate an effect on a green screen, so to speak, it just wasn't realistic. So I
Mhm.
think that's
Yeah.
a point.
And also not only was it not realistic, but I don't even feel like we got anywhere close.
No.
I mean, some of the things it was giving us were like laughably
Yeah.
bad, like cartoonish, not even close to
Yeah.
feeling
So I think some of the
like it would
frustrations
fit.
are you spend a lot of time to try to developing good prompts is a little bit of a learning curve. So learning how to properly prompt it in a way that you're not wasting your time. Because especially with these visual platforms where you're generating either a still or especially video, there's a wait time to the generation. So every time you generate, even if you're on an unlimited plan where you can generate endlessly without having to pay for more credits, there's just the turnaround time. So you want to make sure to craft the prompt in a way that is clear for the computer to understand, that it gives you a result that you want. More often than not, you're probably not going to get a result that you want. And you may have spent, 5-6 minutes waiting for the result to come back. You get it back and you're like, okay, it's not what I wanted. So you got to feed it back through over and over and over again. And you're just killing time. So there's just a frustration of trying to get the clip to exactly where you want it, knowing how to prompt it properly. And then in some
It
cases, it's
takes
not even
so much
possible. I
patience.
feel anyway, with where we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and it takes so much patience. Like, even if you are going to go the route of trying to, use AI tools, integrate AI into what you're doing, buckle down and get ready for it not to be an easy process and for it to take a lot of time. There's a huge learning curve to it. You've got to write these prompts really nicely. In this instance of this confetti shot that we were talking about, we ended up scrapping it all together and just kind of like working around what we had shot
Going
on the
with a
day, because
backup, yeah.
we weren't even close. Then there was another effect that we tried to do. It was like a deep background thing that we were trying to add in post-production, and so we're like, well, maybe we can make this work. It's a flock of geese flying like way through the background. And same thing. I mean, you spent tons of time prompting, reprompting, just trying to get this what seemed like a fairly simple thing, just a little
Just
flying
wanted like a
V
flying
flock
V of
way
geese.
in the background, and it wasn't even close. And we ended up just going with an old school method of like a green screened computer generated from probably 10 years ago,
Yeah.
like
I know,
thing that we just
something we got from a
threw in
stock
there, and it
website,
worked, and it worked fine. Yeah, and we spent less time doing that. But I do think it is, I think, a good practice though for filmmakers like us who are interested in how can we integrate these tools into our workflow? How can we use them to push the use of them in projects where we can, just so that we're staying fresh with what's possible. How can we use it?
Exactly,
What are the
yeah.
weak points on it? If we weren't doing that and we weren't understanding where it's not working, then I think we would be falling behind a little bit with these tools, because while they're lagging now, I think pretty soon we're going to be able to get in there and do some of these things that we're trying to do now unsuccessfully.
Yeah, and it's healthy to experiment it too, like you said, to know what you can and can't do. Because if you're ever in a situation where a client has a particular ask, or even you, God forbid, you sell an idea, thinking in my mind, oh, we can probably do this with AI. You're going to want to know if there's actually an opportunity to do it with AI before you kind of sell it. If you don't have the budget to hire a VFX artist or anything like that. So I guess what have been what you would consider some of the pros for the use of AI that we've seen?
Yeah. I mean, definitely a huge pro for AI where it works really well is just using the language-based models like Claude or ChatGPT, and using them and working those into your workflow, especially on pre-production, and especially in the ideation phase, scripting, some of those sorts of things. And we use it a lot. I use it quite a bit throughout the whole process. But I did a kind of a fun experiment. So I used ChatGPT. So I went into it and I asked it to give me some statistics about how I use it in the filmmaking process. What am I doing the most of? How am I prompting it? And what are some of the stats that Nathan has from using ChatGPT? So this is what it gave me. I thought some of them were kind of interesting. So, all right, the big pie, or where I use things the most. So pre-production and ideation phase, I use it 58% of the time there.
Okay.
Business and client communication, so things like writing emails or like chatting with clients, that sort of thing, 20% there. Post-production support. So, we do a lot of editing in-house and we're not perfect editors. So I'm, looking for like, how do I do this in this program? How do I find that hotkey, that sort of thing. And then production and technical, it's at 8%. I'm not really sure exactly what that means or what exactly that is.
Technical,
but
yeah.
give me 8%
I wonder if
there.
that's, does that have anything to do with kind of like website SEO research and stuff like that we've been doing? Or is this saying specifically production?
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. On the technical side of things,
I
that
did an
can make
interesting
sense.
experiment with ChatGPT, speaking of production and technical,
Mhm.
where I was just kind of curious. We were going into one of our shoots in a studio, and I had drafted up kind of my lighting kit, got the rentals in, kind of drafted up also a lighting diagram tentatively for what I thought we would probably do, and passed it along to the gaffer. But before I did that, I took some of our reference images and added it to ChatGPT and asked it to break down, how would you recommend that I light this scene? I said, like, it's in a studio. These are the lights that I have. How would you recommend I light this scene to kind of get close to this reference? And I'll be damned if it wasn't almost exactly kind of the lighting diagram that I had drafted up, that it recommended, that I kind of use as the lighting scheme to kind of match this reference that I gave it, which kind of blew me away, that it was actually capable of kind of comprehending and suggesting these sort of technical setups that I wouldn't have guessed that it was able to,
Now,
would have been able to do.
did it know what like additional context for it, like what lights you had available to you, what your budget was, some of those
So
things?
I didn't tell it anything about budget, but what I said is like, this is my lighting kit. How would you use this lighting kit to achieve this look?
You had, and it was telling you, place this light here for this effect, put that light there for that effect. Put this modifier on that light, put it over here, and to achieve this. Wow.
But I will say, I have noticed with ChatGPT, I feel like, and this maybe is jumping ahead to some of the cons, so maybe I'll just kind of dabble in this quickly, but I feel like you always have to do your due diligence and not just take whatever answer it gives you at face value.
Yeah. These models are actually kind of like lazy sometimes. Like, they're not necessarily, well, ChatGPT 5 now has, you can tell it to think longer. You can put it on a setting where it doesn't take as long to give you an answer, but they're a little bit lazy like you or I. They're kind of going to want to give you the answer that you're looking for as quickly as possible, unless you turn on the option to have it really think through everything all the way. So you need to be careful and you need to be patient with them, because they will just give you the quickest, easiest answer they can find if you're not careful. And sometimes that's the wrong answer.
Sometimes I feel like it's just giving you the answer that you want to hear.
Yeah. Okay, I got a couple other stats. I got a whole page of them. I'm going to read them, and then you can decide whether or not we even need to keep them all in the final thing. But here they are. So another thing that it looked at for me was speed and impact, or what my AI boost was. So it tried to guess how much time I previously was spending on particular tasks, and how much of a time savings it was giving me.
I'm sure it was conveniently
some of
a
these
very
were a
big
little
improvement.
some of these were a little bit laughable, but I thought they were interesting anyway. So creating decks or treatments, or pitch treatments, that sort of thing, which we use ChatGPT a lot for that. It was saying that it probably was taking me about 10 hours previously, which we spend on most of our briefs way longer than that, way longer, by like 2 to 3 times. And that now it's saying that I can get one done in 45 to 90 minutes, which I probably do spend 45 to 90 minutes working with ChatGPT on a pitch deck.
Yeah, and there's always kind of
when we're creating it,
after,
but we're doing a ton of additional, like we're not copying and pasting stuff. Like there's still a lot of work that's going on. For email or LinkedIn communications or other social media communications, it was saying that it probably took me 20 to 30 minutes to put some of that stuff together. I was now getting it put together in 5 to 8 minutes. That one's actually probably pretty accurate. I would say it can slim down some of those that much. Creating scripts from nothing all the way to what it's calling a version 1 said that it would previously maybe take 3 to 5 hours and is now down to 60 to 90 minutes to do. Again, probably accurate, but we're not just copying and pasting this thing. There's a lot of additional work we're doing on it. SEO for the website, for like a web page, let's say about 30 minutes is what I was probably previously spending on that, probably way longer than that, because I know nothing about SEO. So I was doing a lot of like trying to figure that out, down to 5 minutes, which I think is accurate. This ChatGPT really shines for SEO stuff. I have a couple of signature moves that it told me I do all the time that it thinks work really well. It sees me using them a lot, which is starting broad and converging fast with things. So asking it for 6 to 10 quick options, finding maybe 2 out of those 6 options that are keepers, and then saying, okay, can we take these 2 options, put them together, and then let's see what the end result is after putting these 2 together. And that's a really effective way of working with it, especially for creative ideas. Reuse and reskin, which is rejected ideas getting recycled for new brands, which we do quite often. 90% rule, which is stop perfecting, ship it, and then iterate on it later. I do that a lot, try to make sure that, when I'm working with it, we're not getting totally into the weeds and spending a crazy amount of time trying to get something to 100%. Get it to 90, get it out of the AI tool, and then use your brain to figure it out from there. And then constraint first and creativity second. I like to give it a lot of context about clear creative constraints, everything from what our budget is on a project to how long a commercial needs to be to whatever pieces of context I can give it to really give it as many guardrails as possible. So that's everything I got.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, I think that's one of the things that ChatGPT is really good at, which is like crunching data. You always have to do your due diligence and check yourself, but also you have to know what some of these strengths of these systems are. And I think there are a lot of them. I think it's really good, especially at crunching numbers and doing analytics. We do use it for creative reasons to come up with ideas, but you don't take the direct creative that it gives you. Use bits and pieces or use it for inspiration or sparks to kind of come up with your own ideas. So I think knowing the limitations of a platform is key. So to kind of recap, I think some of the pros are, I think efficiency. I think especially for small teams, it can really drastically increase your speed and efficiency. I think there's also cost savings out there for both brands and filmmakers. We talked about ElevenLabs. Sorry, again, voiceover artists. It's certainly saved us cost on projects to use AI voiceover. You do start to wade into quickly a lot of issues with, human voiceover artists, like usage and how long an ad is going to run and all that stuff. When you have a limited budget, sometimes is just it's going to really hinder who you can get as a voiceover artist and what they'll agree to.
It really is allowing brands that or companies that may have not previously had the budget for voiceover artists for like a broadcast commercial. They can now get in the game with some really incredible sounding voiceover artists for a fraction of the cost. And so it really is just making it more available to these brands. Whereas previously, I mean, it can be thousands and thousands of dollars just for the usage rights for your voiceover artists if you're going something broadcast. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize like the cost savings on something like that. We're literally talking about thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And again, we're not talking about any of the ethical concerns surrounding this. We're just talking about real world dollars and cents here.
I mean, that's just the truth of it. I mean,
it's
that's
unfortunate, but you know, I think there's a reason we probably get a dozen emails a week from voiceover artists looking to drum up business, unfortunately. So what are some of the cons that you found using the AI?
Some of the cons. So I know one that you and I kind of talk about or think about quite a bit, just homogenization of ideas, especially creative ideas. So if we imagine a world where, you know, we're pitching projects to our clients, we're pitching creative ideas, we're coming up with creative ideas, and everybody is using these language models to come up with these creative ideas. We're all feeding the same pitch deck into it, possibly, and getting out creative ideas from it. It can all start to just kind of be an echo chamber, and ideas and concepts can all just start to sound the same and not really be that kind of unique or creative or have, you know, our signature taste or our signature like preferences on it, that sort of thing. So I think homogenization is a big one for sure.
Yeah, I think we really need to be careful just also from outside of homogenization is also just becoming creatively lazy as well. Yeah. When you're doing creative tasks, I feel like the more you challenge yourself mentally to come up with creative ideas, the easier it becomes to kind of put your mind in that space and to be a creative person. So if you start to lean on too much of AI, I feel like really your brain's going to start to just kind of get itself out of that mode and become a little bit lazy. And you're just not going to be as effective as a creative individual. So on the topic of homogenization, I thought it'd be interesting to do a little experiment here for us both to take the same brief, feed it through ChatGPT, and get a couple of ideas and see if they're the same.
All right. So we've both done this. We both run it through our personal ChatGPT. What did it come up with for you, Brian?
Yeah, so I guess a little context on the brief itself.
Yeah, good.
The brief centered around two main characters. We'll just call them the twins. And they're both kind of these like kooky, retro-inspired workout twins that are, they're spokespeople for this particular grocery chain. They have headbands and kind of 70s-inspired exercise wear. So the theme was definitely going to be these two twins running throughout the grocery store no matter what. And it was all about using their app to find savings. So I asked it to give me a couple ideas. It gave me 6 in total. My first one, maybe we can just go through these one by one, see if you have anything that is similar. It's called Tap, Save, Celebrate. It says, every tap on the app triggers a mini victory moment. Confetti bursts, end zone dances, and twin high fives.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I've got victory tap. One confident tap on the app turns everyday shopping into a slow-mo celebration. So those are pretty much the same exact idea.
They are pretty much the same thing. And it gave me a key visual here. Let me see if the key visual even lines up with yours. The twins mid-jump surrounded by app icons exploding into confetti. Okay, so that's a little different.
Yeah,
but I feel like it's definitely along in the same vein for sure.
What's your next one?
So this one's called the Deal Olympics. So the big idea is the twins treat every grocery run like an Olympic event. The buy one, get one balance beam, coupon curling, and mystery bonus marathon.
All right, here's what I've got. Mystery multiplier mode. The store lights shift to arena mode when a mystery bonus is triggered, turning checkout into a championship moment. So a little bit different, but still pretty similar.
So that kind of sounds a little bit of like a similar gag to my next idea, which is they call it absolutely victorious, which is the twins unlock savings like power-ups in a video game. Every scan or tap lights up the store like a retro arcade. So they're kind of talking about these kind of lighting gags and stuff like that. It's kind of somewhat similar.
Yeah. Interesting. So on the top 3, we've gotten 3 pretty close matches, right? So
there's definitely some similarities. And so also, I guess, a little bit of context with viewers, we did this brief before AI existed. So we actually came up with our own idea independently of any sort of AI. And interestingly enough, so our idea that we settled on was doing this sort of 80s Rocky style training montage, right? Where we pitched the idea of one twin holding the feet of the other twin while he's doing a sit up, and when he does a sit up, he hits the app and clips the coupon to save. He's doing like farmer's carry as he carries 2 heavy turkeys down the aisle and slams them into the shopping cart, and then the other twin does like a sled push where he's got a fully loaded cart full of groceries. The one twin is standing on the front of the cart, and the other twin is pushing it like a football sled. So all of this to sort of this like eye of the tiger type energy. And interestingly enough, even though this was long before the AI, they actually reference eye of the tiger energy multiple times in some of the ideas that it gave me.
Really? Yours mentioned that. That's interesting.
And and the brief said nothing about eye of the tiger or anything like that, but the tap save celebrate number 1 for the vibe, it says think eye of the tiger meets grocery glory.
Okay. So interesting. So there you see like a little bit of how the homogenization comes into the, just using ChatGPT or another language model for your creative ideas, but you also see like there's some little hidden gems in there that you could take and run with or create like your own unique idea off of. So again, using it as a tool that doesn't replace, but kind of helps augment what you're doing is really powerful. I think too, since we're talking about cons of ChatGPT, one other thing that these language models in general, one thing that I oftentimes notice is that they actually can waste my time if I'm not careful, because everybody is so interested, why wouldn't they be, in saving time as much as possible? So by default, we're going to these tools to try and save time, try and get the project or the task done quicker. And what I sometimes find will happen, and this is especially true with coming up with creative ideas, is that I'll go in there, I'm really looking to save time, maybe the pitch is due tomorrow or there's a really tight deadline on it, and I begin just like going into ChatGPT and spending all my time talking to it and going back and forth with it, and next thing I know, I'm a little bit in the weeds with it, or I'm way down this rabbit hole, or I'm just like putting all of my time into it. If I actually would have stopped on the front end and just use my brain to come up with a creative idea, I might have come up with something, oftentimes I can come up with something that's just as good or maybe better, even quicker. So there are some tasks where you're actually, I think, sometimes wasting your time to use these tools. But then there are other tasks I know I can go there and I know I'm going to save time. I'm definitely going to save time with these tasks. So big piece of advice is just figure out like what tasks you really can save time with and what tasks end up being a bit of a time suck for you.
Yeah, I do find myself experiencing, I guess, what I would feel like call a little bit of like prompting fatigue. I'm so focused on trying to be so specific and make sure, I'm so worried that when I'm going to hurry up and when I'm going to hit send, I'm going to have overlooked some sort of detail that's going to send it down a wrong path. Then you're going to have to back up and sort of like say, oh, no, and correct it. I want to, do this, not that. And I do feel like there's almost like a little bit of like anxiety around just trying to think about all the things that I need to tell this and not overlook or miss anything. And it's frustrating. So I do feel like one of the cons also we've talked a lot about ChatGPT here, but backing up and talking just a little bit about some of the visual platforms, let's say like Nano Banana or Midjourney, or even some of the video generation things, there's just a little bit, I think a big con is a lack of nuance. And this also kind of speaks a little bit to your time suck. If you don't get the prompt right, you'll get an image that is maybe, let's say, 60% of the way where you want to be. And so you have two options. You can try to like regenerate, and let's say you do, and you get another 4 results, let's say, that are nowhere near kind of where you were hoping it would be, right? So you're like, okay, well, let me grab the one that was like 60% of the way there. Now comes the time suck of trying to get the nuance of getting it to at least 90 or 100% of the way there. And you're trying to push this image, which is sort of what you want. And you're trying to explain, I want to keep this, but I want to change it just a little bit. And it just doesn't get it. So I do feel like a lack of nuance is a huge problem. And you can quickly find yourself in the weeds trying to push an image to be exactly what you want. And I think that's something that can be counteracted with learning how to prompt a little bit better. And also it may get better with time as these AI platforms get a little bit better. So I think you should continue to challenge yourself so that you keep your brain in that creative space and you learn to keep thinking creatively. So to think about the context of this episode, talking about AI being a threat or a tool for filmmakers, how do you feel AI is going to impact brands or clients of filmmakers?
So maybe not necessarily filmmakers themselves, but how is it impacting the actual brands themselves? I think as it stands today, there's a decent amount of content that brands can try to generate and use AI tools, especially for social. I mean, social, you're looking at a smaller screen, things are quicker, people are not kind of as aware, paying as close attention. So I think it's easier to get away with a lot of the AI tools that are out there on social. Now, when you get to the big screen, broadcast television, that sort of thing, there's still a lot of ground that needs to be covered before these tools are really going to make a significant impact there. So there's that. And then I also really think brands just need to be extremely careful with how they're using AI, because people are getting AI fatigue already. They can spot it oftentimes. They can sniff it out and understand it, and they're getting a little bit fatigued by it and all of this like AI slop that's out there that some brands are putting out. So I think brands need to be careful about how they're using it. I think they need to be intentional about how they're doing it, and that they need to really think strategically and think smartly about it if they're going to go the route of integrating it into what they're posting.
Yeah, I feel like you almost need to go one of two ways, right? You either need to be leaning into the AI so over the top that it's like
and
funny.
It's obvious. Yeah.
Or you need to have it totally undetectable. I can't tell you how many ads I've come across like scrolling through Instagram where I see they're trying to sell me some widget or whatever the heck it is, and you can clearly tell it's like an AI person. It makes me feel like the brand is just not legitimate. Like some sort of like fly-by-night product that they're just using this terrible looking AI spokesperson to with the same AI voice that you hear everywhere.
It's such a turn off.
Now, I do think it is going to empower a lot of brands to maybe lean on filmmakers a little bit less, because they're going to be capable of generating some assets in-house. We've already come across one brief where we were supposed to be shooting these sort of little, we'll call them like cocktails in a small little frame, but the agency was actually going to use AI to generate these sort of liquid effects that were going to be taking place outside of that frame. I think it was like flowing chocolate. So typically that would go to like a VFX artist or something, but they were just going to use AI to generate that. So I think there is going to be some cost savings for brands. And I also think it's going to lead to common trend that we already see with a lot of things where filmmakers are going to be needing to deliver more for less. I feel like the industry is always kind of going that way. If these tools are available to you and the brands know that they're available, they might end up pushing you to try to figure out and do some VFX in a way that uses these AI tools for less as part of your project. So I think that's another way it's going to impact filmmakers, but it's also probably going to benefit brands in that they're probably going to be able to get more for less.
I agree. I think it's a good point you make about how the industry is just constantly moving towards more for less, more for less. And it's a frustrating progression, especially for a lot of filmmakers that are constantly feel like they can't win because they're constantly being asked to do more and more and more for less and less and less. But it's just the natural progression of the way the industry is going to go. And I think, as you pointed out, most industries go that direction. That's just a very natural way for many of them to head.
Yeah.
And it's so often I sometimes hear other filmmakers, and I know we're guilty of it ourselves because it is frustrating, kind of complaining about that. But you can either complain about it or you learn how to create more for less. And the individuals who can do that and who will probably be using AI tools to get themselves there are probably the ones that are going to win in the industry.
Yep. And I think it's also worth pointing out that it still requires your professional ability to tell a story, to craft a story arc, to, inject a little bit of taste and a specific look into an advertisement.
Yeah.
It still requires that human element. And right now, as we're talking about it, we're talking about generating assets. So I don't know in this capacity that's really replacing filmmakers. It might threaten certain, positions like VFX artists and stuff like that. But I think still the filmmakers themselves, it's a tool for them to use.
Yeah. And no matter how good these tools get, how accurate they can become at replacing filmmakers and people actually being on a physical set with physical cameras pointed at actual human beings, no matter how good it does at replacing that, there's always going to be an interest for us to watch actual actors and actresses or to watch real human beings doing things. Like, I just don't see that going away. Now, I do think it's very possible that we'll see almost like AI generated content, be it maybe like commercial stuff, but even like movies or TV shows, really. AI generated content will maybe become its own kind of genre. It also allows us to kind of, appreciate it for what it is, which is, if the day comes where you can do an entire movie with AI, you'll be really impressed with the people and the teams and the tools that are used to put them together because you know what you're looking at and you can enjoy the context of what you're seeing. And it'll probably be really impressive, and it'll probably still be really incredible stories that make an impact on us and that we like watching. But that doesn't mean that we're going to lose the genre of filmmaking, which is actual humans.
Yeah.
Filming actual
humans. That's an interesting
doing
segue because I think
things.
one of the next things we wanted to talk about was some of the ethical concerns with AI. And there was actually an interesting news story this week where, have you ever heard of Tilly Norwood?
I haven't. No. Who is this Tilly?
So Tilly Norwood is the first AI generated character who is being billed as an actress, so to speak.
They finally did it.
It made news because she was being scouted by a talent agency to actually be signed. And it's interesting because are people going to connect with these AI characters? How are these models learning is another ethical concern that we could talk briefly about. And then, just the ethical concerns of taking jobs away from humans.
Yeah, you were telling me a little bit about like how these AI models actually learn the other day. I thought it was pretty interesting. I didn't really, I had I think a vague idea of sort of how these image models and video models actually go out there and learn how to do this stuff. You were breaking it down for me. I thought it was kind of interesting. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because that, as a bit of a baseline, helps support kind of the rest of the conversation about the ethical concern.
when we talk about these AI models, they all kind of feed off of data. And essentially what they do in layman's terms is they crawl the web looking for photos with text descriptions, and they essentially digitize that content. And the more data that it has, the more it can kind of learn from all of these things. Quick example would be if there's only ever one photo of an apple on the internet and you asked it to generate a picture of an apple, it would probably generate an image that was very similar to the apple that it digitized on the internet. And this is totally devoid of all the types of different apples, right? The computer would think this is an apple, period. It always looks like this. It's always this size, which is why you need to feed it a ton of different data so that it can learn apples come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And this is where some of the concerns come in, because obviously when it's crawling the web, cataloging all these photos and artworks, it comes across content that's copyrighted. And so the artists say, well, I didn't give you permission to copy my work. And AI scientists would say, well, it's not copying it, it's learning, it's looking at it, it's breaking it down, and it's learning what is contained in this artwork. And it's no different than a human who would be going out and doing research. I think one article I read, it was like, look at the Impressionist movement, where suddenly you had all of these artists creating artwork that was done in a very similar style. And they clearly were all iterating on each other's work. And this computer system going out and looking at this photo, learning what this object is, and then being able to start with a prompt and create an image is referencing data available to it.
And so when it comes to the copywriting issue, the argument is like, well, these AI tools that are crawling the web aren't really copying this information or these pictures of apples. They're just looking at them, breaking it down into zeros and ones, kind of internalizing that information the same way that a human kind of looks at an apple, picture of an apple, and it's kind of saved in your brain. You know, you may not be able to pull up the exact, image, but you kind of have it like a little bit cataloged in your brain. So I think the argument, right, is that the AI tools are kind of doing the same thing. They're sort of just looking at it and they're moving on to the next thing. They're not really copying it and holding on to it in some database somewhere to like pull back up and show that exact same apple, that exact same picture later on.
Yeah, it's not taking somebody's nose from some random photo that it got on the internet and putting it onto an AI-generated human being. Their argument is it looked at, 200 million other noses and learned what a nose is and then made its own interpretation of a nose in this photo. One of the arguments also is that, as it's going out and crawling the web, people say, well, I didn't give you the right to copy this image and load it into your platform. To which they would say, well, it didn't copy it. It just kind of digitized and learned. It turned this photo into zeros and ones and learned from it. It's no different than if I were to navigate to your website on my computer. My computer technically copies an image and caches it onto my computer in more of a one-to-one direct way than this AI ever would. So that's the argument. Now, some people say it's different, a machine learning versus a human learning, and that's just how they see it.
Yeah. And as it stands right now, disclaimer, this is not legal advice for anybody, but as it stands right now, most of these models, they are out there in the world being used for commercial use, and the lawmakers in this country haven't really stopped it. They haven't really done a huge amount of like regulation or like stopping them altogether from going out and kind of doing what they're doing. As it currently stands, these tools are pretty usable for commercial, but if you're a filmmaker or brand or company or organization, you really have to keep on top of this, and you really have to be, consistently checking and double checking and making sure that you're legally in the clear if you're using this content out there, because that can all change quickly. And there is some AI generated content out there that you are not allowed to use commercially. So you do need to be careful. It's not just a free for all. So you have to do your due diligence on it.
Yeah. And I will say that, I think it's maybe different in the EU, but in the United States right now. So it's also important to note, if you're a brand and you're using AI content cannot be copyrighted. The only thing that can be copyrighted is the human effort that might go into creating an artwork if you used AI, which there's a little bit of a nuance there. So let's say an artist goes out and they generate 1,000 AI images, and then they did the work to take each of these images and then like put it together into a collage, let's say. You could copyright the collage, and because there's a human effort that went into the creation of the artwork as a whole. But what you can't copyright are the individual AI images that make up that collage.
Yeah, or if you ask the AI tool to make the collage for you, now it's no longer copyrightable because there was no human who was putting it together.
And it's interesting, right? It's all about the human work that goes into it, because there was a court case, I can't remember what year it was, but there was a monkey took a photographer's camera and took a selfie. And I believe someone tried to copyright the image, but they said no, there was no human effort in the creation of this photo. The monkey took the photo, so you as the photographer do not own it, and you can't copyright it.
Interesting. All right, so we've hit the ethical and creative tensions and concerns, I think, pretty hard here. So anything else there? Or
I think the only other ethical concern, which, we're not economists, but the loss of human jobs is a huge one.
Yeah.
And I do think lots of industries have been phased out in the past. I mean, a lot of people use the example of like the printing press. But when you think about that, like how many people ever really worked in the printing press industry? Not a ton compared to how far reaching the AI and these language models, the number of people that these things can replace. Think about any sort of like customer service industry or any sort of like phone answering service or really even middle management and like marketing professionals could potentially eventually be replaced. I mean, that guts so much of the world economy. I mean, it's definitely going to be a huge concern going into the future.
Totally agree. And it's anyone's best guess as to exactly how all of that is going to play out, but it's something that'll be interesting to see. It might happen in a pretty significant way in our lifetime. It's very possible. It's just hard to know how fast this stuff is going to come along. Nobody really knows. So, okay, so we've hit the kind of ethical and creative tensions pretty hard here, I think. So let's kind of move into our final topic that we're going to chat about, which is just a little bit of thinking about looking ahead and what do we think is going to happen in the next maybe 3 to 5 to 10 years with AI, and especially AI in the filmmaking industry. So we're not AI professionals. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but maybe we'll give our best guess or kind of what we think. So here's a question for you. In 3 years, do you think AI will actually be able to replace the need to go out and film out in the field? So maybe brands will still be interested in actual humans filming, humans doing stuff, but at the same time, there may be the ability to go out and shoot something that materially actually looks, sounds, feels exactly the same, even on a big screen for a broadcast commercial or in a theater or something like that. In 3 years,
I don't know that we would get there if it's like a full-on live action spot. Might be possible. I think where we might definitely see where that might happen could be products, maybe the studio tabletop type sneaker commercial on a particular background, and like maybe like the shoe comes apart and comes back together. I mean, you already see a lot of stuff like that is done by 3D artists. So I think stuff like that could definitely be replaced with AI for sure.
Yeah, because what it's really not good at right now is, say you put a particular brand of shoe into it and you said, okay, now break the shoe apart and make it look like the pieces are coming apart. It has a really hard time making that shoe look like that shoe for the duration of whatever clip you're generating. And it's similar with actors and actresses. One of the things that it has a really hard time doing right now, although I do know there's some tools that are quickly getting quite good at this, but it's been an issue for a while, is if I'm the actor in a scene, to make me look exactly the same in every single scene. So my face looks exactly the same, all my features are the same, and I materially don't look different from scene to scene. It has a really, really hard time nailing that, but it'll get there quickly, I think.
I think in 5 years it'll probably get there. Now the question
so
is
too.
like, are people going to want to see it? Are governments going to pass legislation that prevents it? You know, we talked very briefly about Tilly Norwood as this AI actress. I actually got a panicked email about Tilly Norwood and the threat to actors' careers and everything else. So there's already going to be some attempts to try to prevent movie studios from using this type of content. So it'd be interesting to see like where legislation goes. I read through that email from SAG, and one of my first thoughts was they probably used ChatGPT to write this email. The question, again, going back to the ethics is like, how is it learning? It's learning off of other people's performances, presumably, right? It's a little bit of a black box for how these things really work.
Yeah, I think it's possible in 3 years for it to just replace filming. I look at the leaps that it's made in the past 1 year. So, you know, I think it exponentially gets harder the closer it gets to perfection. So it's, you know, easier to get it 90% of the way there than it is to go from 90% to 100% there. Might like take longer than I think, but I think it's very possible in 3 years. So look at it's coming. If not in 3 years, I think 5, it'll be here. Yeah. Okay, so you're a DP, a director of photography. You work with lighting and cameras, and that's kind of your jam. And if AI goes the way that we're thinking it will, one possible avenue for you as a creative is to now be a person who just is a full-time, maybe not full-time, but at least a part-time prompter. You're just sitting there prompting, coming up with images. Basically, you're a creative, I guess, prompt engineer. So in a world where that becomes, let's say, 50% of your job, do you stick around in the industry or do you pivot to another industry, find something else to do as a career?
I don't think I would want to stick around if that were a majority of my time. You know, I do think there's going to be certain sectors of the industry, let's say, you know, telling real human stories, documentaries and stuff like that, where I don't think there's going to be any interest or of injecting AI, right?
You're
not going to see people going out for nonprofits and telling the stories of people in need using AI characters. You know, it just is very inauthentic. So I don't think it's going to impede upon certain genres within the filmmaking world. But if it were a majority of my time, I don't think I would, because I don't want to be stuck behind a computer personally.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think similarly. I don't think I'd find much joy in prompting AI tools all day to do like the whole workflow from start to finish. I agree with you that there's a lot of sacred ground out there where AI probably isn't going to really touch in the filmmaking industry. I think we're doing some work in some of those areas that we enjoy, and hopefully we can continue to do that. But it's going to get really competitive out there. I think that you're going to see, you know, as filmmakers get pushed out of certain types of projects, that AI is kind of replacing them for, it's just going to become more competitive for the actual in-person people filming people projects. So I see that coming down the line too. Again, it's the natural progression of the industry. Clients are going to want more for less, and it's just going to keep ramping up and ratcheting up from here on out.
I think the lesson here is that nothing is black and white, especially in the AI industry. Everything's kind of gray. So when it comes to the title of our episode, AI, filmmaking tool or threat, I think it's AI, filmmaking tool and threat.
I would agree. Yep. It's a little bit of both. Totally agree. So cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for our 4th episode. I really appreciate you spending some time with us, hanging out. Leave some notes down in the comments. What do you think about AI? What do we get wrong here? Anything to call out that we might have gotten wrong in terms of what we're chatting about? And we look forward to hearing from you.